Hi, this is Ellen from the Chili Dog, and today I'm going to teach you how to do a long tail cast on in the round so that you can minimize the gap in between the last stitch you cast on and the first stitch you cast on. I am working on DPNs because I'm only casting on about 45 stitches. If you were working a larger cast on, like perhaps for a hat, you'd be better off using circular needles. So I'm going to set this aside for right now, and first I'll show you how to actually do the long tail cast on. And to make the long tail cast on, the first thing you need to do is make a slip knot. Whoops. And just place that loop onto your knitting needle and pull it down to tighten. So your working yarn that's coming out of the skein is at the back and your tail is at the front. And you want to make sure that your tail is about 4 times longer than the length you're casting on. So the first thing you do is place your index finger and your thumb in between the working yarn and the yarn tail. And then you're going to wrap your other 3 fingers around so that they're holding both the working yarn and the yarn tail underneath your hand. Turn your hand over, and you're going to begin by bringing your needle under the first strand that's on your thumb, over the second strand that's on your thumb, around the working yarn, and then pull the working yarn through the thumb loop. Drop the strand off your thumb, and then use your thumb to pull the tail to tighten the stitch. Pull your knitting needle down. The knitting needle goes under the first strand, over the second strand, around the working yarn. Pull the working yarn through the loop. Drop the loop off your thumb and tighten the tail with your thumb. Pull down. Your knitting needle goes under the first strand, over the second strand, around your working yarn. Bring the working yarn through the loop. Drop the loop off your thumb and use your thumb to tighten the tail. And I'll do it one more time. Bring the knitting needle forward, under the first strand, over the second strand, around the working yarn. Pull the working yarn through the thumb loop, drop the loop off your thumb, and tighten by pulling the tail with your thumb. So you would go ahead and cast on one more stitch than what your pattern says. And you do that, and that's what's going to help us tighten the loop, or tighten the gap between the stitches. And you can either divide your stitches as you're casting on. You can divide them onto your DPNs, or you can wait and cast on all your stitches and then divide them onto your DPNs. So I already have my stitches cast on and divided, and my pattern said to cast on 45 stitches. So I actually cast on 46, and that's what we're going to use, that last stitch, to close the loop. So to close the gap in between the last stitch and the first, we're going to transfer the first stitch onto the last knitting needle. So you're just going to slip it over without twisting it. Next, we're going to pull the last stitch we cast on over the top of the first stitch. It's sort of like doing a bind off. So we're going to take that last stitch, pull it over the first stitch, and drop it off our needle. And now we need to transfer that first stitch back to the original knitting needle. So just slip it right back. And right now it looks like I still have a really big gap there in between my knitting needles. So to close that gap, all you do is pull the working yarn towards the back and your yarn tail towards the front, and the gap disappears. So from this point, you would just continue knitting in the round, and your gap will be gone when you get there. So I hope you enjoyed learning how to do a long tail cast on in the round so that there's no gap. And until next time, happy knitting!